Hey folks, we've got a very security-ish centric episode lined up for you today. And this is all prompted, of course, by NIST's recent announcements that they have made some changes to their password policies. Now, NIST usually sets the tone for what is determined to be the best practice in terms of passwords, requirements, minimum, maximum length, types of characters, all that stuff. So some stuff has changed. I've got Eric Siren on the show. We're going to talk about exactly what has changed and what are current best practices for passwords. Coming up on today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Hey everyone, it's a new week. That means it's time for another episode of SysAdmin Weekly. This is your podcast by sysadmins for sysadmins and dedicated to all the tireless tech folks working in the trenches day in and day out to keep our digital world spinning. As always, I'm your host, Andy Serwich, and I've got my regular co-host with me today. I've got Eric Siren. How's it going, Eric?
I'm good. How you doing, Andy?
Doing good. We've got a security-centric episode lined up today, I suppose, and some people like the security stuff. Some people don't. I would argue that even your run-of-the-mill sysadmin needs to have some security chops these days. Unfortunately, it's a requirement of the times, I guess, right? And of course, we're talking about a security item that has been around for decades, and that is, of course, passwords. Surprise! Now, everybody out there is screaming at their radio or their phone or whatever right now. Andy, what could possibly be so interesting with passwords that it would require its own episode? Well, NIST recently updated their guidelines for passwords, and there's some good changes in here. Some good changes that those of us in the security industry have been pushing for some time. And we're going to get to them, right? I don't want to, give away the whole show here in the first couple of minutes. So let's get to our regular recurring segments, and then we'll circle back to that password discussion. And of course, one of our normal reoccurring segments on the show is our Nerd Hour segment. This is the segment of the show where my co-host and I talk about the geeky, nerdy things that we've been doing either in our professional life or our personal lives, right? So, Eric, I'm going to let you take a stab at this one first. What geeky, nerdy stuff you've been working on lately?
You see my background here? That's my geeky, nerdy stuff I've been working on. I've moved my office from one room to another, and I'm going to see how many downvotes I get just for that horrible cable management situation that I'm perfectly well aware of. Thank you. I know. I'm about a quarter of the way through the cable sorting, and so
I gotta say, in our Halloween SysAdmin Horror Stories episodes 2 weeks ago, as of this recording, there was one story I didn't get to, and it involves cabling. And so there was a manufacturing facility I used to do support for in my MSP days, and it was one of our discovery visits on site just after the contract was signed, all that, right? And our point of contact there, she was like, "Now, I have to warn you, this closet over here is really messy." And I'm thinking like, okay, I've seen some messy server rooms, like, this won't be a surprise to me. I kid you not. Cables, it was like a cartoon. You open the door and cables would literally fall out. It would literally fall out of the closet. It was the biggest rat's nest of cables I have ever seen in my life. Anyway, we didn't get to talk about that one 2 weeks ago, but fun times. Anyway, so my Nerd Hour stuff for the episode is I have been super busy with a bunch of side projects and professional projects that I have not have not gotten the chance to do a lot with my lab in the house over the last couple of months. So everything was still running a fairly early version of Trixie, Debian Trixie stable. Trixie stable 13.1 is out now, so I had to run some updates and things like that. And I was doing some more tinkering with the KVM hypervisor and cutting my chops on the vir-sh command at the command line. So vir-sh vir shell, I'm guessing is what that stands for. I can only assume. So, manipulating and doing things at the command line, which I've done off and on over the years, but mainly, rely on things like libvirt, things that graphicalize just enough to run a couple of VMs. Anyway, there's one interesting thing that I learned about the vir-sh, I guess is what I'm going to call it, and starting and stopping virtual machines on KVM. So when you stop a virtual machine, so it's vir-sh, stop, the name of the virtual machine, the first message that it sends you is destroying domain, name of the virtual machine. That's the verbiage it uses. I'm like, wait, destroying? Now I know you don't mean delete, right? Thankfully, no, it doesn't mean delete. But I mean, somebody who's not well versed in virtualization, that's would be a freak out moment, right? But I'm like, okay, it's just destroying the state, right? The running state of the VM. It's just interesting verbiage in my opinion, but hey, we all do things a little differently. Anyway, so that's the nerdy, geeky stuff I've been working on lately. So next up, we've got our News React segment. This is our attempt to keep the show somewhat timely, right? Because you're probably listening to this maybe 2 weeks after we recorded it. But this is a segment of the show where my co-host and I talk about, some news headline that caught our eyes over the last couple of weeks. Both of mine for today's episode center around OpenAI. Now, I'm sure everybody is sick and tired of hearing about OpenAI and GPT and AI this, AI that, or maybe you're not. I guess I'm kind of indifferent to it. I find it both kind of interesting, but there are times where I'm like, another AI thing. I'm sure everybody shares my sentiment on that. But there's two headlines that caught my eye here, and they go hand in hand. So, and they're related to our conversation in last week's episode, Eric, about enshittification, right? And if you have not seen that episode, go back and take a look because it's relevant. So the first article I stumbled across, like I said, these are related, was a Forbes article that basically talks about how OpenAI has established a for-profit company now, and they've done the restructuring needed in order to have a a for-profit arm of the business. Now, historically, they've always had that nonprofit angle. The nonprofit still exists and owns a stake of the company, but this for-profit arm is opening them up to a future IPO, right? And so, according to the news article, in terms of who owns what percentage of the company here, Microsoft will own a roughly 27% stake in the for-profit piece of OpenAI. I'm just making sure I'm reading it here. A 26% stake in the company will be held by the OpenAI Foundation, which is the nonprofit, right? And then employees, both past and present, as well as other investors, will hold the remaining 47% stake, which is valued at $500 billion with a B, billion dollars. And so we see OpenAI making the moves to start becoming a for-profit entity, which the writing was on the wall for a long time, right? I mean, yes, their stated goal was building, AI for the masses, but like I said, the writing was on the wall. I mean, everybody assumed that eventually that they would go for profit. Now, let's pair this with another headline that I ran into just today. And this is an article from Bleeping Computer, and I'll put both these in the show notes, folks. But the headline here is OpenAI is going meta route as it considers memory-based ads on ChatGPT. So, as you scroll through this article, there's a couple of key pieces here, right? So, as per the Financial Times, ChatGPT has about 800 million users, but only 5% pay. Moreover, OpenAI, 70% of the $13 billion in revenue actually comes from paying customers. So, I mean, OpenAI has been just a big black hole for money lately, right? Because they're not really turning a profit yet. And I get, got to keep the lights on. But if you scroll a little bit further down the article here, I found this particularly interesting. So they did a focus group. And I'm quoting the article here. Some users already assume that ChatGPT's answers are ranked based on sponsorship and that the company sells ads according to AI focus groups. Some staff have used these findings to advocate for adding advertising. Now, this is the last piece I'm going to mention, lest we continue on for another 10, 20 minutes, but here's the kicker. So we talked about the for-profit arm being established, paving the way for an IPO. There's now this discussion for ads. Now I'm going to quote one other thing from the article here, and this is where the meta angle comes in. The information reports that 630 former Meta employees are now at OpenAI, which accounts for approximately 20% of the startup's workforce. So they are slowly heading for, quote, metafication, where ads could be the primary source of revenue. And so the enshittification starts.
Cool.
I love that. That's your response. Just cool. And I have to say, ChatGPT has been an amazing tool for a number of different things, right? One of my favorite things for it is like, if I'm in a brainstorming type capacity, I'm working on, I don't know, topic ideation or something, like, just talking to it like I was brainstorming with somebody is super helpful. But now if I know that this tool that I like to use for certain things is now going to have ads baked into it, how do I trust that its outputs aren't biased to whoever pays them the most for ads? And I'm just going to let that question hang out there. That's my rhetorical question there. Well, maybe not so rhetorical, but the implications are rhetorical. We'll put it at that. So, Eric, I concede the floor to you, my friend. What do you got?
I'm going to jump right into mine because I think it is 100% going to tailgate on yours. People are downgrading. I mean, like enough to change a trend. They are downgrading their smart homes to analog homes. And you know what?
Yep.
I do not have is a smart home. I don't have it. There's no Alexa. There's no Hey Google. There's no whatever, the Apple version. None of it. I don't want it. Not going to get it. Didn't want it. And let me tell you, I think I'm going to speak for a whole lot of people. And like, we don't want your ads anymore. Knock it off.
Right? Exactly. And some people have very private conversations with AI. Questionable whether they should do that or not, right? But nonetheless, private conversations. And I think the assumption is that those conversations are private. Now, are they going to sell access to those conversations to ad suppliers?
Yes, they are. I mean, yes, you should just assume
Yeah.
if you're interacting and there's a network connection involved, it's being sold. Somebody's listening,
Yep.
maybe not a human, but somebody somewhere is tracking that, hanging on to it,
Yep.
And even if the
And
people who
so
have it today are benign about it, it's there. They have it now. And
there, yep. I think we're going to see the rank and file, the regular, Joe on the street is going to continue using OpenAI, right?
Yeah.
But those of us with the know-how, I think we're going to see a lot of people start going to local models and agents on-prem, right? Using tools like Olama. Our good friend Mike Nelson and we did an episode about Olama, I don't know, a couple weeks back. I'll put that in the show notes too. You can make sure that thing's not talking to the internet if you want to, right? So it gives you that finer grain controls. I don't know. Gonna be interesting to see where that goes. I don't know. That's a service where I think if there was a don't show me ads tier and don't include my information in ads, to advertisers, I'd pay a higher subscription tier for that because that's probably what they're going to do.
I think at least one of the streaming services has concluded that makes them less money.
Oh, I'm sure they have. I'm sure they have.
Which, like, okay, who out there is, because when's the last time you bought something you saw an ad? I'm almost to the point that if I see an ad for it, I'm not going to buy it. Just on general principle. Like, leave me alone. Get out of my life. I'm sick of it.
Yep.
And I buy less and less than I used to. So that's one thing. And then I don't buy based on ads, though. I buy based on my research.
And see, that's, there's been studies that show, in terms of generations, I'm just barely a millennial. I'm like on the very front end of that generation. And they found that you're Gen X, I'm sure, right, Eric? Yep. So they found that millennials especially, but a little bit of Gen X and, I forget what the newer generations are, Alpha, right? Whatever. They when they're making a purchasing decision, they very much are in a place where when they quote unquote walk into the store, whether it's a physical store or if it's an online marketplace, whatever, they already know what they're buying.
Yeah.
Right. So
I don't trust anybody.
Yep.
We know better. We know they're out to get us.
Right. Exactly. So it'll be interesting to see where all this goes.
It's not entirely fair, but I have told more than a few salespeople, like, if your product was that great, you wouldn't have to tell me about it.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
Not entirely fair. I get that there are a lot of brand new companies out there just trying to make their way, but we've been in business for 25 years, and why am I just now hearing about you?
Yeah.
Well, we've been bought 47 times. Oh. Or you're not actually a 25-year-old company.
Yep. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where things go, that's for sure, but time will tell, I suppose. So well, what do you think? Should we talk about passwords?
All right, let's do that.
All right, passwords. Everyone's favorite topic. It's been around for, boy, I don't know, longer than I've been touching computers. I know that. As long as I've been using computers, there's been passwords.
Well, they've been around longer than digital. So, I mean,
that's very true.
A term borrowed by the computing industry from spies. Yep. I don't know who started. Little boys club to keep the little girls out. I don't know.
I've never looked at the history of passwords, right? I have to imagine they go way back when to ancient days, right? Mm-hmm. I did a video for work one time where it was like a short where I was describing, the basics of cryptography, and I used the Caesar cipher as, an example of cryptography. It's a super simple algorithm, right? I mean, you have your 26 character alphabet. You choose what the offset is, 7. Like, you have a B. What's 7 characters after that? That's the actual letter, right?
We have there's an example of a proto password in the Hebrew Bible. Shibboleth. You've heard the term shibboleth, probably.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So the whole thing was, in order to get in, you say the word shibboleth, and if you pronounce it correctly, then you're one of us, and if you don't, you're a foreigner. So
probably goes back way further than any of us.
The concept is out there. Yeah. It's been there a while. Yep. So
anyway, in today's episode, just for clarity, we are talking about digital passwords in the modern era. So I will just set that baseline there, right? And really what prompted this entire episode is the fact that NIST has recently come out with a bunch of new password guidelines. NIST updates their guidelines every so often. I still feel like the industry has not caught up from their last update a year or two back. I don't know if you remember that, Eric. This was a year or two back. The big change that NIST made at that time was they started suggesting no regular rotation of passwords.
100% guarantee that the world has not caught up to that. There's still.
Nope.
I was talking to somebody at work, and she's fairly new to our organization. And she was talking about the system they had that made the admins rotate their passwords daily. Like, how long ago was that? And it hasn't been long since they were still doing that. And I looked up that company, and they're still selling that product that forces that daily password rotation. I'm like,
that's painful. I can't even imagine. That sounds terrible. Well, I just, for those folks that may not know why that is generally frowned upon now, is because it forces people to make serialized passwords. Fall 2025, winter 2025, spring 2025, right? I mean,
so now you have all this tech in there to prevent them from doing that without real you're it just it's weird, Andy, that I remember years ago, like, this is because I did a lot of work with bank branches, and I'd go in and, where's the password? Let me tell you, you know where the password is? Let me help you out here.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew that's what you're going to. So for those folks that are listening, Eric just picked up his keyboard and pointed to the bottom of his keyboard. So people are obviously putting passwords on sticky notes under the keyboard, right? So
that's where they are. And
for a bank.
This is in your bank. And I know during our Halloween episode, I was like, remember, y'all, your money's not safe. Well, you think that's gotten better? It hasn't. But hopefully at least the password thing is kicked in. But I was saying this 15 years ago, like, if this is what we're doing, then our whole approach to passwords must be wrong. If my bank teller's writing down her password, because whatever reason, well, it's got to be 87 characters long and no repeating, and all the, yeah, we're doing something wrong, y'all. And it turns out after a while, NIST is like, yeah, actually, you are doing it wrong. Let's do it a different way.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned the, special characters, no repeating characters. One of the key changes that they just announced in this latest round of updates, and I should clarify that the current document, which I'll put in the show notes, folks, the current document from NIST is still in a draft format, so it could change, but historically they haven't a whole lot once they've gotten to this stage. But one of the key changes that they are now emphasizing in this latest round of changes is there's a focus now on length over the use of special characters or mixed case, right? So you think about those requirements that we've had for a long time, like you must include a special characters. So what did everybody do? They put an exclamation point on the end, or they replaced an A with, an ampersand, or an E with the number 3, right? And the funny thing is, we all thought we were so clever. Well,
no, we weren't.
Everybody was doing it.
Yeah. Well, and there's an XKCD comic about this. It's got to be 10 years old now,
right?
At least something about that, where they're pointing out that there's at least 2 punchlines in it, and one of them is we've trained users to make passwords that are easy for computers to guess, but hard for the user to remember. And then the other punchline is what was it? I have most of it in my head, but it wasn't even the punchline. There was like, entropy is the only thing that matters in passwords.
Yep.
It's the only thing that matters. So just make it longer. And so, like, again, at least a decade ago, people are telling me what you need to do is full sentences. They need to be nonsense. And like, password I don't use anymore, so I don't mind telling you, is like, I listen to music when I'm working that is I want it to kind of make me, I don't know how to describe it, but music theorists could explain it better than I can. But there are certain ways to arrange notes in a way that, so like the Jaws theme makes you tense.
Mhm.
There's a whole science behind how to do that. So I listen to that kind of stuff. I don't want music, or I don't want words. I don't want any words. I just want it to kind of make me kind of keeps my heart rate a little bit elevated, keeps me going, keeps me awake, keeps me thinking. Because as we spoke about in one of our other episodes, I have ADHD. I work better under deadlines than I do under free reign. So by playing music that makes me nervous, then I can kind of have that deadline going and keeps me focused. Anyway, so that music is not easy to come by.
Right.
So
Right.
I get on a whole lot of like just trying to follow breadcrumbs on like Apple Music, Spotify, whatever, just trying to follow breadcrumbs and assemble a list of things that works for me. And anyway, some of them feel the need to put like voiceovers, like clips from movies or something. And there's one, it's not what, but I swear, it's like I listened to this song like 18 times trying to figure out, but the guy in the back is going, "That's what I want. And that's what Jason wants." I'm like, "Who is Jason?" And when I finally played it closer, that's not what he's saying. He's saying, "That's what I want, and that's what you should want." But somehow, but with the music and in my hearing and everything, like, that's what
Yeah.
Jason wants. So for like 6 months, that was my password. That's what Jason wants as a sentence, right? So it's got the apostrophe, it's got the spaces and everything else.
That's
And so I don't use it
fif-
anymore. So their sentences, their
15, 16
phrases, their
characters.
words, it hits all,
Right.
yeah, it hits all the things it's supposed to hit. And it doesn't mean anything. Like if you were just, unless you'd heard me out of this conversation, what are the odds you're going to stumble across that? Because it doesn't even exist anywhere. It's something I thought I heard. So that's the
And I
kind of
can't
thing I
imagine.
use.
Yeah, I can't imagine that phrase is in a rainbow table somewhere either.
Mine
Right.
is now, but I don't use it anymore. So it's rotated out. It's fine. But that's how I come up with mine passwords. They're not even passwords anymore. They're phrases. And if you don't like spaces, some people don't. I've noticed so I use Bitwarden, and Bitwarden likes to put like ampersands and asterisks at the front and the back of the password and do stuff like that.
Yep.
And because it throws off a lot of these, it throws off a lot of things actually. It actually makes a lot of legitimate password things mad. So, which is fine. I mean, it helps me. A couple of banks I've decided I don't like doing business with because they don't like Bitwarden's automatically generated passwords. So,
There there is still the occasional service I come up across where it's like, "Oh, sorry, your 16 character password is too long." It's like,
I've had banks doing that, and I'm like, "Then
"Come
I don't
on,
think I want
man."
an account here, guys. This is." Because again, like we were talking about, or like I was talking about with the, trying to enforce, well, no repeating and all this. I mean, there's something that's pulling your password in plain text on their end, looking at it, and I don't want that. You know what I mean? And so, the more tech they have on their side playing with my passwords, the less I like it. I want you to hash it on my side and just throw it in your database and don't worry about it ever again. Not your concern. Go
And
away.
and that's how it should be. That's how it should be, right?
Yep.
They should never see the plain text value ever for
No.
any reason
Nope.
whatsoever.
And if my password is the number 5, well, that's on me, isn't it? And if you can't generate a 256 character hash out of that, then that's on you.
Yeah.
I'm not saying to use the number 5 for password. Oh, I did not.
Right,
Did
right,
not do that.
right. So so I coming back to this point, right, is that that length over special characters, like you said earlier, entropy is your biggest tool for making secure passwords. And I forget exactly where I saw it. Recently saw a study that basically says modern computing can brute force a 7 or 8 character password basically instantly
Yep.
at this stage.
Yep.
Right. And so you start making those passwords much longer. I think this NIST document suggests 16, 17 passwords in that area. I guess I'm paranoid because mine are usually to the tune of 20, 25 characters.
Yeah.
If it's something that is super, super sensitive, it's probably close to 30.
Yeah. I have Bitwarden doing mine and I set it for a 24.
Yep. Yep. Because
I
it
don't
was,
I don't come up with my own passwords anymore. I have one, what they call it, a master password, so I can get into Bitwarden and then from there it generates them for me. So I
yeah.
don't even know what they are.
Yeah, that's the same thing I do for a lot of my stuff is like I'll have it randomly generate one.
Mhm.
I'll make sure that whatever site, whatever account I'm setting it up doesn't complain about the password. And if it's good, I click save in my password manager and that's the
All
password. Like you
done.
said, I don't even know what it is, right? So
And the important part of that is you're not reusing them because everybody seems like it's getting broken into these days.
Yep.
I mean, actually, let's just stop. I don't even need a B. That's plenty. That's reason enough on its own. Is don't
Yeah.
have the same password on multiple sites. And I got people. Well, how do I remember them? There's your problem.
Yep.
Like
And
Bitwarden
I've
has
got
a free SKU. I am using the paid, so I do. I know I sound like an ad for them, but they have a free SKU that I use for years and I'm just fine with. The
yeah.
only thing I really get out of the paid that you can't with the free one is it'll also generate those codes, the one-time use codes
Yeah.
for
Yep.
MFA.
Yep.
It'll do that, and I didn't care for a long time because there's so many free ones out there. But there are a few sites. Maybe we should talk about this because I'd pick your security-minded brain on it. But I've got a couple of places that literally 100% of the time I go to them, I have to MFA every single time, and it's wearing me down. And I'm afraid I'm going to do something. Somebody picks my password, yeah, I'm sure, again, you know what I mean? So, not necessarily a today problem, but
Right. That's the age old ease of use versus security conversation, right? And I mean, there's
well,
some things that, sorry, go ahead.
I hear you on that, but I'm feeling more like this is the problem we have with passwords in the first place is we're rotating them so much that we're making
Yep.
stupid choices. So if you MFA me every single time that I go, for one thing, I don't go as much, so that's not all
Right.
bad, but the other thing is what happens one day, well, I've had to like, Bank of America is one of the ones that just breaks m just, I I'm gonna end that relationship very soon. I just can't stand them, because it's 100% of the time, and then, like, it times out. I mean, it does all the things that you think it should do, but I have to MFA every single freaking time I wanna do anything, including refresh space. It's just so obnoxious, like, I'm just gonna stop using Bank of America. I'm just gonna be done with it because it's not helping. But what happens one day when I'm in there and it's like, well, I've been working on one screen with, that, and I'm doing finances and everything, and somebody manages to crack my password in that moment, and then they get it, and yeah, fine. Here's the
Yep. And for
when.
those, and you are explaining prompt bombing is what that type of attack is called. And for those folks that may not be aware of that, prompt bombing is an attack where I, as the attacker, let's say I was the attacker in the situation that Eric has laid out, right? I get a hold of Eric's password. I don't have the MFA code, but you know what? I'm going to request that MFA code again and again and again and again until Eric gets so frustrated he hits the approve button on his mobile authenticator, right? Now, some of the authenticator providers have built-in safeguards for prompt bombing attacks. So, for example, if you use Microsoft Authenticator, instead of just unapprove or deny now, like for example, when you log into your Microsoft account, now you'll get 3 or 4 numbers to choose from instead, right? And it'll show the number on the screen, and that way it protects you from those prompt bombing attacks. But there's been a lot of breaches in the last 2-3 years that were successful because of prompt bombing.
Mhm.
So
So now you gotta go back to the only way to avoid that is to have a nice password on that. And Bank of America is
yep.
not set up for any of this. They're just terrible at everything.
Yeah, and I
Oh, no,
I
we're
always
gonna not be
hesitate.
sponsored by Bank of America now.
Whoops. Uh-oh. I'll have to
Sorry.
go back and edit this. I was gonna say, you have a valid point, definitely. When it comes to something like banking, I would personally, I would always want the MFA prompt just for that extra layer of protection. But that said, if I was the provider of whatever service you're trying to log into, and I knew people were having this MFA fatigue, I would offer a hardened version of authentication above the password in MFA. It'd be something like, passkeys, passwordless authentication. We're going to get to that later
Passkeys.
in the
I
episode.
love passkeys.
Yep, for sure.
Well, what
And so
kills me
that's
on that one, especially with I'm gonna keep on picking on Bank of America because I just don't care. I'm on my phone using my app, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna MFA you." You know where they send the MFA to? The phone that I'm using.
so much for for multi-factor. Well, I guess technically you are still multi-factored if
Oh,
somebody steals your
it's
phone
so
because they have to unlock your phone first,
uh-huh.
right? So
Uh-huh.
I'm getting nitpicky here.
Yeah, and I also have to unlock my Bitwarden to get the password. I guess I don't have to. I guess technically, if we're assuming they've broken the password, that's not the problem. But still,
But it is a questionable design decision.
yeah. Well,
Agreed.
so many questions, and I almost want you to sign up just because you tell me what's right about that. So, man, I'm dogging on them today. Woo!
No, that's
Definitely not
okay.
getting that sponsorship.
That's all right. And for those folks at Bank of America that are currently watching and or listening this, know that it was Eric who had these complaints and not Andy.
Yeah,
So.
and if you want them to go away, go fix your crap. Not me.
Anyway, let's circle back to our key changes from NIST. So we talked about the emphasis on length over special characters in mixed case. We talked briefly about the removal of the periodic password expiration. I think what's worth noting here is that in the previous changes a year or two back, it was a suggestion that you remove the arbitrary periodic passwords. It was a strong suggestion, right? No longer a best practice to do that. Now it's like, yeah, get rid of periodic password resets is what they're saying now. Next up on the list here is it's recommended that you use block lists for your passwords for your organization and or a service that screens for compromised credentials on the dark web, right? And basically, the goal here is to disallow the use of passwords that have been breached. So you heard me mention a rainbow table earlier, right? I know these are basically pre-hashed passwords that attackers can use to, brute force very commonly used passwords very quickly. You don't want your password in a rainbow table because it makes it so much easier to break into. And so that's basically what they're protecting against with this recommendation. The other big thing that they're protecting against here is password stuffing, right? Where you're guarding against password reuse. So like you mentioned earlier in the episode, Eric, is there's been so many breaches lately. And come to find out, there's a ton of people, surprise, that use the same password between services. And that's why password stuffing is so effective. And that's why it's such a big issue. And that's why this recommendation now from NIST. Now, some people will have, privacy concerns with this. There are ways of doing this without having to actually know what your user's passwords are. There's services that allow it. And I mean, just block lists. It's just a list, right, of known bad passwords. If one of your users uses it, a flag gets raised, right? So they shouldn't be using that password anyway, right? So which is the whole point. So next up on the list here is encouragement of the use of passwordless or multi-factor authentication for higher assurance levels. So I'm glad to see that passwordless has made it on the list here, right? And I've actually gone passwordless for a number of my accounts via passkeys. And in case the folks listening can't see the webcam, I am holding up one of my YubiKeys. So I have a number of accounts that I can only authenticate to with my YubiKey. Now, I have multiple YubiKeys. When I set up passwordless for all the accounts that this covers, I registered both this and an extra YubiKey that sits in a lockbox somewhere. And should I ever lose my production one here, I'm not, SOL, thankfully. But I was really happy to see that end up on the list here as well too, because passkeys especially. One of my favorite things about passkeys is that when you use them, they are tied to a specific URL. So you've now resolved the issue with lookalike sites, right? Whenever I do webinars for my day job, I usually end up talking about it's a legitimate penetration testing utility. It's called Evilgenix, IVILGINX, right? Like Nginx, but Evilgenix. You can find the bits for it out on GitHub, freely available. And like I said, it's a legit red teaming penetration utility. But what it does is it's a reverse proxy toolkit, and that allows me to host up a very convincing Office.com login page or G Suite login page or Facebook login page, right? With a custom URL that I provide that I get my target to click on, and then I siphon off their password and, more importantly, their session token, right? Which I can then use to authenticate to whatever the service was. And so passkeys directly protect against that type of attack. If the URL doesn't match what the passkeys for, no go, not going to work, which is what we want, right? Yep. So I was happy to see that on the list as well, too. So, well, those are the key changes. What I wanted to do, Eric, is spend a little bit of time talking about implications for sysadmins and organizations. And I think we've kind of organically covered several of these points as we've been talking through NIST's key changes here, right? When it comes to, what your password policy should look like, for example, what needs to change. Well, that's... I say just change your password policy. I've seen organizations where it takes moving heaven and earth to change the password policy, right? But at least start that process, right? You can go to your CISO or your IT director with the new guidelines, and you need to make that change on paper first, unfortunately, and then you can enforce it in your password policy, both for cloud resources and, if you're still running on-prem AD. So you're going to want to take the new length requirements in mind, remove the regular recurring changes, and also remove the requirement for special characters and or mixed case, right? If you want to adhere to exactly what NIST has laid out here. So that would be kind of one of the tangible things you'd want to go do. There are a couple of places where I could still see some issues. Legacy systems, for one, that's... even with some of the new guidelines may not work. So I'll give an example. Years ago, I was working for a manufacturing organization, and they had a quality lab, which is where they would, take random parts into and test for quality assurance purposes, right? Well, the machine that did this testing ran on, are you all listening? It ran on PC-DOS version 4.
Wow.
Not MS-DOS.
I bet half the people listening to this weren't even born.
PC-DOS version 4.
Oh.
And everybody's asking, well, why the hell was this thing still in play? It was like 2010 or something like that. Why was this thing still around? I don't know what it is with manufacturing organizations. And Eric, it's probably like this in medical too. I don't know what it is about manufacturing organizations when there's some proprietary machine attached to the software and operating system. It costs millions of dollars to upgrade that machine, because you can't just upgrade the OS. Nope. You have to upgrade the whole package, right? Yep. You have to get a whole new lab machine, a whole new... Yeah. So it was one of our jobs in IT to keep that PC-DOS machine kicking for as long as absolutely possible, which was a tall order sometimes. Yep. So, but, when it comes to password requirements, you have to take in machines like that into consideration. Now, thankfully, this thing didn't have a network connection, so I didn't have to worry about it. You probably couldn't even talk to it using a modern TCP/IP stack, right? Because...
Yeah, I mean, there is that without physical access, you literally had nothing, because the only cable plugged into it was the power cable, and despite what you might see in movies, you're not sending network traffic over the power lines. It's just not
getting there. So for sure. The other thing I want to call out here is there is an impact on end users, and there's an impact on your service desk as well too. And it's a beneficial impact with a caveat. So with the removal of regular password rotations and moving to like a longer passphrase as opposed to a weird, password with just random characters, end users are going to be able to remember them better, right? At least that's the hope. That said, from your service desk's perspective, it's going to require some end user training. They're going to need to understand what is required of them so that they can make these changes, right? So you're going to want to communicate that out. I'm looking through my list here of challenges, pitfalls, and real world concerns. I think we have discussed some of these already. Yes, we have not discussed this one though. Length does not always equal security. And we just got done talking about how length is better, right? And it is. But if I'm an end user and I'm required to put in an 18 character password, if I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 is my password, probably not better in the security side of things, right? So if they still pick, easily guessable things, doesn't matter what the length is, right?
Rainbow tables again.
Exactly. So, let's through my list here. Passwordless, MFA rollout readiness. So I feel like most organizations have gotten over the MFA rollout hurdle. Most organizations have. Not all, but most. I feel like switching to passwordless, that's kind of the next step, right? That's going to be, I feel like that might even be a little bit of a heavier lift than it was getting MFA rolled out.
It will be.
Because the physical aspect of it, right? Yeah, you have things like Windows Hello for Business, but you have to have hardware that supports Windows Hello for Business. Or if you're going to go with YubiKeys, you have to get YubiKeys to everyone. You have to get the keys, in place first. So there's a whole litany of things you have to do. So that's something to keep in mind, right? If I was, in the trenches today, making these security decisions, I would start moving my team toward passwordless just because it's awesome. But it's not an overnight thing. It's going to take some work.
So from the field, something a lot of people don't think about. So like in medical, we do a lot of kiosk work in which there is still a shared entity. So you carrying around a YubiKey is not great because that's you. We don't necessarily care who you are. That sounds so bad.
Well, no, you're right though.
We're moving people through things and places and time and everything at a rapid rate. And so personalizing, making it. Are you on the big list of people who are authorized to be here? If you are, you have one of these devices and it's, yeah. So,
well, I mean, the tangible case of what you just laid out, sticking with the medical example is I go to the doctor, I go into the exam room or wherever where my appointment's going to happen. There's one computer in there.
Mm-hmm.
Nurse comes in, ask the initial questions. Hey, what's going on? What medications you're on? All that type of stuff, right? They use that PC to enter that information. Doctor comes in, uses that same PC to review that information with you. And then they use that same PC to, prescribe medication and all that stuff, right? It's a shared system. Mm-hmm. So like you said, from a YubiKey perspective, and a shared kiosk like that, look, from the system side of things, we don't care who you are. As long as, physically you're going to be one of the people that's supposed to be using this machine. And then definitely that's where YubiKey would, have extra hurdles.
And we'd figure it out. Like if that had to happen, we would figure it out. But it's like you're talking thousands in some of these facilities. You're talking thousands of people, and we want one. It's so from the provider side perspective, what we want is a single image to push to all these machines. And so I'm one of the people that I will get really mad. I hate when people are like, well, I got an error message, so I reformatted the whole computer. Like, get out of my industry. I don't like you.
Scorched earth.
Yeah. It's just, well, what was error message? Printer out of paper. Get out. Go home. Stop. Find something else to do with your life. You don't know what, get out. But in these cases with these kiosks and these machines are so many, and we're not going to troubleshoot problems.
Yeah.
Anything. We don't troubleshoot anything. we reformat it. That doesn't work. We throw the machine into the dumpster and we get another one. You know what I
Well,
mean?
plus,
And
you probably have some sort of Pixie boot solution in place and an
all
imaging
the yeah,
solution.
all
Yeah,
those things, yeah. And the big thing is, so like if you come in there as Andy, well, okay, now I've got Andy's profile to load. I got somebody dying on a table, man. That's not going to work for me,
yeah.
right? It's things like that, and
Yep.
yeah.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So, well, looking ahead, I have my next section here. I wrote down, looking ahead, password policy and the evolving identity landscape. We'd love to use that evolving landscape term in the security industry for some reason, and of course, I, wrote it down here just like that. But I'm looking through my list here. I think we covered a lot of this. We talked about passkeys. One thing I want to make sure that we're all on the same baseline about here is, what is a passkey? Because I still run into some folks that they've heard the term, but they don't know exactly what a passkey is. Passkeys are really cool in that it uses public key cryptography, public private key, in order to authenticate you to a service. And so, there'll be a public key, and then I have my private key here on my YubiKey. And it uses, like I said, that public key cryptography, key checking, to make sure that you are who you say you are. You have this thing that you say you do. And when people are like, afraid of, hey, if you just rely on this one physical YubiKey, haven't you eliminated multi-factor authentication? When you plug in the YubiKey, for example, I have to unlock it with a PIN code. So not only does the URL have to match, not only does the passkey have to exist on the device, I also have to unlock the device in order for whatever service I'm authenticating to access the key.
Mm-hmm.
And so you
something
just
you have and something you know. There you are. There's two factors.
exactly. So you got a 60-second crash course on passkeys, but you do a web search for it out there. You'll find all kinds of reading material. They're really cool. Legit deal. It's basically the FIDO2 standard, right? Is essentially what it's based off of. Let's see here. Oh, I also wanted to make sure we touched on this too. And we talked about credential stuffing a little bit, right? So I had a line item here on talking about how attacker behavior is evolving, because it's always this constant cat mouse game, right? Defenders do one thing, then attackers do another to get around it. And it's the same with passwords. So credential stuffing is an issue. I mentioned token theft because if I have the token, I don't have to know the password, period. I can use that session token to log into whatever service. And in the cloud era, that authentication token, that session token, is gold for me as the attacker. And so you're starting to see a lot of security posture starting to be built around the safety of session tokens, because it's a legit concern.
Right.
And the one I have listed here that comes as a surprise to a lot of people is OAuth abuse. If you're not familiar with OAuth, OAuth is an industry standard for authenticating applications to cloud services. So the most common example would be using Microsoft 365 and you find a nifty calendar add-on to help you manage your calendars, right? You say, hey, that looks cool. I want to use it. Install. You click the install button. You get an OAuth prompt that says, hey, application X is asking for access to your emails, your calendars, your whatever. It lists all the things it needs access to, right? And we have trained end users inadvertently over the years that they need to click approve to get work done, right? And so most users just click approve when they see this OAuth prompt. Now, the problem with this is threat actors have learned how to make malicious OAuth applications. And this is what surprises a lot of people. In 365 specifically, because that's where a lot of my security work happens, you have Entra ID, which is the identity service backing the Microsoft Cloud. When I authenticate an OAuth application to Entra, it gets its own security principal in Entra. That application is its own security entity once it has been approved. And if I was an attacker and I got Eric to install this malicious OAuth application for me. It doesn't matter if Eric changes his password 100 times. I still have access to that cloud tenant using the permissions that were given to the OAuth application. So, yeah. So, again, Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, just because we were talking about this on a recent episode and something related. Like, this is where I get so frustrated with, like, vendors even who are like, well, we're encrypting the traffic. I'm like, yeah, but you're not checking identity, so who cares?
Yep. Identity is the new firewall. Paul and I did an
it's not
episode
supposed to
labeled
be.
it.
It shouldn't be. And this is the thing that drives me absolutely nuts is
Yep.
PKI, public key infrastructure, certificates. What is the primary function of a certificate? People are like encryption. No,
Nope.
you're wrong. You are absolutely dead wrong. The primary function of a certificate is identity. I don't need a certificate for encryption. Okay, never did. Never needed a certificate for encryption at any point in history. Certificates are about identity. So if you're willing to transmit traffic to anybody who presents you a certificate, you're doing it wrong. Okay. And I cannot get enough people to understand that. And it's not new. This is not a new concept. We're just now waking up to it a little bit. Like, because of what you just said as well, they presented me with a prompt.
Yep.
Okay. Do you know who they are? Well, no.
and you're right. We should do a whole episode on public key infrastructure.
I really want to get more into it. I've been talking about it for a long, long time that this is the year where I'm going to do my stuff on PKI. This is the year. This is the year. And that keeps going by. It's kind of like the year I do PKI is also going to be the year of the Linux desktop. They're going to happen at the same time. I know it. You know what I'm saying? It just,
Yep.
it sucks. But this is part of it. Is I just want to just like, no, if you don't have identity, encryption is irrelevant. If you cannot confirm identity, it doesn't matter. Nothing else matters. I don't care if you're sending it encrypted. If you don't know who you sent it to, it makes no difference.
Yep. Yeah.
Because
Agreed.
at the other end of it, guess what tumbles out of your encrypted tunnel is a bunch of unencrypted whatever information. So,
or depending on what happened, it could be the encrypted data, but the key comes tumbling out after it, right?
or in the very beginning, because guess what happens? What's the first part of an SSL handshake? You know what happens then is like, hey, let's decide on a mutual shared key together. Cool.
Yep. Oh, you and I are gonna have to do an episode on that because I feel like the average sysadmin, they look at PKI and
I'm running into mainstream vendors who don't get this, and it really scares me. Like, stop talking to me if you don't even know what you're talking about. Well, it's encrypted. I don't care. Not fixing anything. Get out. And this goes even in older things. Something I saw. I would love to give proper attribution to this because this is when it dawned on me. If somebody steals an encrypted packet, okay, you can no longer say that data is secure. All you can say is it's private. Secure means they don't have it.
Yep. Agreed.
Private means maybe it is, but they can't see it. Okay. And privacy only lasts until they break through the security. So it is not secure if they have it. And so we need to start rearranging our brains that if the attacker has it, encrypted or not, it is not secure. And so when we transmit data to any fool who's willing to open up an SSL channel with us, there's your problem right there. It's not secure. SSL is not secure. Oops, I shouldn't have said it that way. But SSL actually, TLS is not secure either on those grounds.
Right,
no identity,
you
got nothing. No identity,
I would
you got
argue,
nothing.
Right, and I would argue that I agree with your point in that if an encrypted packet is taken, it's not secure, but it's private, right? Today, that's the case. We have seen multiple cases where governments of the world, threat actors of the world have this mentality of, we're going to gather all this encrypted stuff. We can't look at it right now, but someday when quantum computing takes off, we'll be able to decrypt all of it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where the private versus secure thing comes. That's a big issue, because if it was not encrypted using quantum safe encryption, all bets are off 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right?
And we don't know what's going to be after quantum. If there's a post-quantum world, we don't know that.
Right. Exactly.
I guess I don't know enough physics. Somebody out there's probably laughing at me like, well, we can't, whatever, fine. but you still don't know what's coming. And so
Yeah.
I just need to keep pounding on people. If you send it to somebody and you don't know who they are,
Yep.
period. It's still kind of hard to just grab traffic off the internet, and
It is.
that's not that it can be done, obviously, but your bigger thing is like if you're willingly, oh well, they had an SSL endpoint, so cool. No,
Yeah,
not where the bar is.
I do see a lot of vendors just make that assumption. Oh yeah, it's encrypted. We're good, right?
No, that's not where the bar is, my man. Not where the bar is.
Yeah.
Stop,
You and I are gonna have to do a PKI episode.
please. Many of
Yeah.
them.
We could do a whole series on PKI.
Just to get people over the because it is scary at first, right?
Yeah.
It is. It is.
And admittedly, the tooling for it historically and today has not been super accessible.
It's been horrible. You've got a few people
Yeah.
who are really into it, but they're not the people who should be designing interfaces. And I don't want to dog on them because we all have our talents, and these folks, their talent is in this security stuff. And awesome, we love you. Now we need somebody else to come along who says, you know what, though, I want to make it accessible.
Yeah.
And let the people who are really like, I don't know the folks who run the Open SSL group or whatever that is, but they're amazing. You know what? Huge round of applause. Is that tool easy to use? It is not.
No.
It is not. But they're doing it. They're out there. They're
I mean,
probably saving the world. And, they don't get their praises sung enough. It's just great, right?
I've been in security for years and I still have to read documentation when I use that tool.
Oh, 100%.
It's not
100%. I've got little PowerShell scripts that are set up for front ends and everything, but you still have to, every once in a while, you're going to have to get out of the dock. System's a little bit different, and it's not going to get easier.
Yeah.
And people
and
have tried writing front ends, and
yeah. I was going to say, let's be clear. They are solving a very difficult problem.
They are.
And I'm sure that speaks to its complexity, right?
Yes. We are not, I am not trying to dog on anybody. Nobody's put forth the effort yet to make it more accessible, and it's hard work. It really is.
It is. Yeah.
And it's going to be thankless because I'm sure that most people are like, who OpenSSL? What? They don't even know what that is, right? And man, I don't even know how far that rabbit hole even goes. OpenSSL is a tool that I know and that I use, and I'm sure it gets even deeper than that. But people they're just completely like you don't even know. Yeah, what was that? I'm so mad at myself right now because I kept getting upset that all the things that so many things people thought that Steve Jobs did, he didn't. It was actually doesn't matter. It does matter, but it doesn't. Basically, what I'm getting at here is so much of the stuff is in tech that we all depend on around the world is hinging on the work of a handful of people who are probably doing it for free.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you've seen that picture floating around social media, I'm sure, where it shows like the internet. And it's all these intricate blocks all stacked up on top of each other. And on the left side of the base, you have like a couple of good sized blocks. But on the far right side, there's just one little tiny domino. And in this example, that little tiny domino is OpenSSL. And if it falls, the whole internet falls, right? So, I'm a frequent listener of the Security Now podcast. If you haven't listened to Security Now, Steve Gibson, the host, fantastic, great podcast. They do a picture of the week that I find very entertaining, and I think that's the first place I saw this particular image I'm talking about. But this reminds me that maybe we should set up a Discord group or something one of these days, and we can share stuff like this when we come across it. Yeah,
All right.
That's for future Andy to think about.
Well, I like it.
Anyway, we are about out of time, I think, Eric. Anything else you want to add before we sign things off?
No, I do want people to kind of sound off though, and what I really want to hear about is like what in PKI scares you? Why have you not gotten in more into it? Because again, I keep saying it's going to be the year of PKI, and we're almost at 2026. So maybe that'll be the year of PKI for me. And so I need to know what people don't know, what they think, what they hear, what they run into and don't be afraid to be wrong.
Yeah.
I think that's also kills a lot of us in tech. I know it killed me for a long time until I finally like, oh yeah, guys, I said that thing the other day and I was wrong. I messed up. And then found out, yeah, nothing bad happened. It's
Yep.
it's
Hey,
not fun,
I get
but
stuff wrong. I get stuff wrong. I mean, you
Yeah.
can't be in this industry and be 100% right about everything all the time. It's
No, and
impossible.
I think there's a lot of pressure to do that, and I think it really holds a lot of us back. So let's just say, maybe I'm not right about this, but this is what I think, and somebody shoot holes in that and help me get better. And yeah. So please help us to help you. I would love to get the world smarter on PKI, because if we don't get there, we're all in trouble.
Very much so. So, well, I suppose we'll call it there, Eric. I'll get my plugs out of the way here. But first off, I want to thank you for coming and spending some time with us as always, my friend. Good having these conversations with you. We always have good chats.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, for sure. And thanks for spending some time with us, folks. Hope you found value in today's episode. So just a reminder, you can watch the show out on the YouTubes if you want the video version of the show. But if you're more of an audio only type of person, we are available out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Amazon Podcasts. So you can catch us in any of those locations. If you want a nice, easy place to find all the links associated with the show, you can go to www.sysadminweekly.com. We also have a companion newsletter out at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com, where, we throw together some great community links, usually do like a tool of the week type of thing. I provide some commentary, hopefully not too long and droning, but hopefully short enough to where it's impactful. I like to think it's useful. It's usually grounded in my experiences, or I have some sort of snarky thing going on, or I'm up on my soapbox about something, but hopefully you all find value in that as well. So you can find it again at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. I did a really good job plugging that, didn't I? So I made it sound really enticing, I hope. Anyway, appreciate you watching, folks. Thanks for spending some time with us, and we will catch you again next week for a future episode of SysAdmin Weekly. Have a good one.